Higher.
There it is. Higher.
Yeah. There you go.
That's why we're teamwork over here. Hold on. Let me put it back. There we go. What's up, everybody? Turn the Jets podcast. 4-game losing streak. Jets lost 31-0. One of the worst games I think we've all watched pretty recently. Joined by Dalbin Osorio, as always. Dio, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. I'm good. No complaints. No complaints.
Connor Rogers, how you doing, CR?
Doing good, doing good.
Hanging in there. Hair looking sharp as always. You put me and Dio to shame.
Straight off the path train.
We will talk a little bit about that absolute dumpster fire at some point in this podcast, but we got a lot of questions tonight on Twitter, which was great. And we want to dive into them because obviously people are frustrated and annoyed, and I don't blame them. I don't really blame anyone for all their venting over the past 2 days. After watching a game like that, get it out of the system, vent it out, it makes sense, ran away. But let's dive into these questions. First one from Jared at JazzPegs. Odds Rex is here next year. Me and Dio were talking about this a little bit before the pod started. If you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said much higher than most people assume because I thought that with the 2-year deal and if the Jets were hovering around 500, they would just want some continuity and keep Rex going. That being said, he's had a rough start to the year, and the Jets have constantly been out-schemed, and if you lose games 31-0, and again, Rex is 15-25 in his last 40 games with 10 of those 25 losses being by 20 points or more, and you keep having guys like Demario Davis and Sheldon Richardson question your preparation and your communication, I don't know. I feel like it's a complete toss-up. If you had to ask me gun to my head now, is he back next year, I'd say no. Now, if they go out and play better the next 4 or 5 weeks, I don't know. I think it's going to be a big debate the last month of the season, just like it was last year. Dio, your thoughts?
Gun to my head, I say yes, just because I don't expect them to play as bad as they did on Sunday. Like, this is a team that for 4 games, every game was decided by 7 points or less. That 31-0 game to how we said, and we said this before the podcast, one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the NFL right now in San Diego. And that's no excuse, but, I mean, it's a good team in San Diego who just beat the brakes off the Jets. But if he loses more games like that, then I'd say no. But gun to my head, I think he's back next year.
Connor.
Yeah, gun to my head, I say he's back next year. I'm looking at the schedule right now, and I think this has been the most overreactions I've ever seen in 1 week, and I've been a Jets fan since birth pretty much. And I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a team that is struggling with discipline. The talent excuse, definitely on the defensive side of the ball, is wrong. I mean, receiver and maybe a little bit of the line and quarterback, yeah, there's not a lot of talent, but I definitely think this team wins at least 6 games this year. You're looking at the second half of the schedule. You got teams like the Titans, the Vikings. I don't really think the Chiefs are that good this year. I'm not saying the Jets are that good, but the Dolphins twice, who just always seem to be a mess at the end of the year. I say they win 6 to 7 games. I think Rex Ryan's back, but the only other route I could see it's going is possibly a guy like Dan Quinn or Darrell Bevell, both Seahawks coordinators who, both look really good right now and have for the last year. So that's another option on the table.
Yeah, the only guy that jumps on my mind that I would make like the Godfather offer to would be Harbaugh if he actually shakes free, but that'll actually happen. But we'll see. I mean, that's speculation for a different day. Next question from Sports Talk 420. Would you rather see Dez or Demaryius in the Jets uniform? As Connor pointed out today, there's a very good chance both of those guys will be franchise tagged, although it's not out of the question for maybe Demaryius to slip free if he decides to franchise Julius Thomas, or with the Cowboys' cap problems, Dez slips free. If you had to ask me, really tough question. I think both those guys are top 5 receivers, and I love watching them both play. I'd probably say Dez, and I almost feel a little bad about it, baggage, but Dez is probably the slightly superior player. Connor, Dalbin, what do you think?
Yeah, between them two, I'm going Dez Bryant. I think Dez Bryant's the better receiver. I think Dez Bryant is the second best wide receiver in football. I think that you add him to Eric Decker, and that's a scary 2 receivers with Jeremy Curley eating on the slot and Jace Amaro coming from tight end. I would go with Dez Bryant over Demaryius Thomas.
Connor?
Yeah, I would actually go on the other route here. I would go Demaryius Thomas. We've seen him and Eric Decker combined for over 2,700 yards and 25 touchdowns in a season. They complement each other really well. And I also think there's a really good chance that Demaryius is the guy that shakes free. I think the Broncos are going to use the franchise tag on Julius Thomas, and probably maybe Demaryius will be a free agent.
Next question from Boost McGinnis. Is Jace Amaro's superpower invisibility, or is it some sort of power ring or invisibility cloak? Very clever. And it's not a bad question. And one of the things I talked about in my article today is just get Jace Amaro the damn football. I don't care how you do it. I don't care where you line him up. With what the Jets' situation is at receiver now, the fact that he has less targets than Jeff Cumberland and Greg Stallis through 5 games makes my head want to explode. I understand he has shortcomings and there's an adjustment, but put him in the slot, put him at split end, put him at H-back, put him at fullback, put him at running back and run a screen. I don't know. Dalbin, thoughts on getting Amaro involved?
I mean, I think that he's arguably your maybe third best pure pass catcher, right, after Decker and Curley. I think he's a very good tight end. And there was an article today, I think, that was released where they were comparing him to, like, the 54 guys taken before him or the 53 guys taken before him. And it's, like, very few of – like, him and Ebron are the only two that went in the top 53, the two, and Austin Safari and Jenkins, and he's been better than both of them. So I think, yeah, you got to line him up in the slot, line him up out wide, run a wide receiver screen, run a tight end screen, run a tight end sweep, take it out of Sean Payton's playbook. Do whatever you got to do to get the ball in his hands. I think you have to.
Connor?
Yeah, I don't think this one's rocket science. I mean, this is a guy that should be getting a lot more targets. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. We're talking about 4 week 1, 1 week 2, 4 week 3, 5 week 4, and 3 in week 5. It's pretty absurd right now. And this is a classic, fallback blame on Marty, because he's a guy that tends to drift away from his guys that are succeeding. We've seen it with Ivory. We've definitely even seen it. Somebody's got to be in Gino's ear telling him to run more, so why would you not believe it that it's not his fault? It's definitely not the rookie's fault, Jace Amaro, because every time the ball gets near him, he seems to be making a play for a guy. And he's leading all rookie tight ends in catches and yards, so it's another thing to think about, too.
Yeah, I think we just have to hope that Jace gets more opportunities as the year goes on. I think it's been so frustrating. Maybe the most frustrating comment I see so frequently is people automatically kind of questioning Amaro and Pryor and basically calling them busts already 5 games of their NFL career. Like, I can't even, like, carry on a discussion with you when you're going to write off a guy who's actually, especially a guy like Amaro, who's, like, played better week to week. I just don't get it.
Yep.
Anyway, next question. JJ Ross. What are the cap numbers on Mangold and Brick? It doesn't make sense to try to get some picks from them before week 8. Obviously, I don't think trading for Nick Mangold or the Brick Shaw Ferguson before week 8 because they have 2 of the worst contracts in football right now, unfortunately. They're basically being paid to be top 3 to 5 players of their position, and they're probably top 12 players of their position, if I'm being generous. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the Jets' offensive line going forward, because something that's not talked about and an ugly leftover of the Tannenbaum era is the contracts of Mangold, Ferguson, and David Harris, who are 3 very, very overpaid players based on their level of production. So I think there's going to be some restructures, some renegotiations, maybe a release. The Jets' offensive line, obviously, I think still continues to need to be rebuilt long term. Dalbin, your thoughts on kind of the future of Mangold and Brick and the Jets' line?
One, no, I don't think anybody's giving up any picks of value for Nick Mangold and DeBricker Shaw Ferguson right now, because those are 2 guys who are worth more to the Jets than they are worth to anybody else, really. Mangold's the leader of the offensive line. He's got a young player to his left, and he's got a volatile player to his right in Willie Colon. I think what's being overlooked is the fact that Willie Colon has been so bad this year, and Winters has been better than him, so I think eventually you're going to see O'Day step in. But Mangold and Ferguson, I think you may see some restructures, but I think there's more of a chance of them being back than Rex being back next year.
Connor, thoughts on the Jets' kind of O-line, how much money is sunk into those 2 guys?
I actually think it was a pretty interesting question because I was thinking about it yesterday. The Chargers are on their 4th center in 6 weeks right now, and they're my favorite right now to win the AFC. So if you have the Chargers come calling for a top center, which Nick Mangold in the last 2 years has been a top, not showing signs of decline. I think it's more of a Madden trade, but I think if a team like the Chargers came calling and they offered a 2nd or 3rd round pick, you have to at least think about it at this point with the way the Jets look. As for Brick, it's a little concerning, and if you're the Jets, you got to be scouting every tackle in the draft right now, and there's a reason why Idzik is keeping a lot of money on the table, because if you cut one of those guys in the next year, a lot of it is going to be dead money, and the cap space disintegrates pretty quickly.
combining two questions from L7 Panda and NYC1, who basically said, can we get the season over? What's next? Where do we even kind of go from here? We'll talk about this on Ramble tomorrow. We made our predictions before the season. They're 1-4 now. Kind of reset your predictions on where you think this season ends. I mentioned this before, and I saw a tweet. I forget who did it, but I can very well see this happening, where the Jets go to 1-6 and then finish something like 6-3 and finish 7-9, and there's a huge debate over who goes, who stays. Does Rex come back because they finish so strong? And I think, I picked them to go 9-7 before the year. Obviously, not looking great right now. If you had to ask me to reset that pick, I think 7-9 is probably more realistic. I think it's easy to say they're going to be 3-13, but there's a lot of recency bias there in that performance from Sundays in everyone's head. Not the 3 games before it that were all competitive, but. Dalbin, how do you see this final record shaking out from this point on?
Before the season, I had them at 9-7. I'm gonna stick with it just because I don't think they're the team that got blown off the field on Sunday. I don't think they're a team that's gonna get blown out 31-0. The schedule's tough. I mean, we all said this before the season; it was gonna be tough. And I don't think that's changed, but I kind of brought it up earlier. They get Minnesota, they get Tennessee, they get Kansas City in Kansas City, which is tough because Kansas City beat New England by 34 in Kansas City. But the NFL is such a week-to-week thing, man. Like, you look at the Buffalo Bills, who beat the Bears, who in turn the Bears beat Carolina, lost to Carolina, who lost earlier in the year too. Like, it's week to week. I still think they go 9-7.
Connor, I think you also had the Jets at 9-7 before the year as well, although not making the playoffs. So what would you say now with them starting off 1-4?
Yeah, I said 9-7, no playoffs. 1-4 start. I think they're going to lose the next 2 games. I hate to say it, but I definitely think they're going to win probably 7 to 8 games. I really do. I think the second half, they're kind of a second half. I think they'll be a second half team this year. I think they're really better than a lot of people are giving them credit for. It's funny to watch opinions change after 1 week. I mean, it's just absurd, some of the narratives I see, and I won't get into any specifics to not slander anyone, but there's people that write about this team that I don't even know what to say what's going on right now. But there's been also really good articles today, too, pointing out Idzik's plan. And, I think they win 7 or 8 games, and I don't think you blow it up. I still think they're moving in an okay direction.
Yeah, I think things could very quickly look a lot better if Eric Decker and D. Milner are both 100% healthy. I think those are like 2 of the biggest X factors in this entire roster, and neither have been really healthy for just about any game this year. So D looked good last week. Hopefully Decker with a week off is actually at 100%, and we might not see immediate dividends with Denver and New England, 2 very tough opponents. But I think, long term for the bulk of the season, I think having them both out there will make a big difference on both sides of the ball. Next question from JetLife9896. Why the hell did Geno stop using his legs? This is a really good question. There's been a direct correlation towards Geno. When he runs for more yards, he plays better, and the Jets' offense plays better. Why isn't he running anymore? Tell me, Dalton. Why isn't he running anymore?
Other than Marty tied him up out in the locker room and told him don't use him anymore. It's funny. The decline in running came after that hit against Oakland when he got that shot in the back. And he fumbled the ball. Like, ever since then, like, even in the Chicago game where he had the run where he juked Mundy and then he had daylight to go into the corner of the end zone, you saw him hold up a little bit. So I wonder if, like, it's a fear of injury, if Rex had kind of got in his ear and told him, listen, like, we don't want you to hurt yourself. It seems like he's very consciously trying to not run the ball. And that's a problem because he's a better quarterback when he uses his legs.
Connor, what are you seeing about Geno and his mobility or loss of mobility in the past few weeks?
It makes no sense, and it also makes no sense that a coach isn't in this guy's ear telling him, listen, if your first – because they're running a one-read offense right now. If your first read isn't there, tuck the ball and run. If you don't gain any yards, so what? It's better than waiting and forcing it into these guys sitting in a zone, waiting on the ball. It happens to all of his interceptions. He honestly should have probably about 10 interceptions right now. Guys have dropped balls. D-backs have made just bad plays. He's been pretty fortunate, and if he doesn't start using his legs, it's going to get really ugly soon.
All right. We got a question from Shaw Money. Is Rex going to adjust his coverage on 3rd and long? I think we all know what he's talking about, which has basically been a lot of cover 0 or a lot of 1 high. Connor, I'll let you speak to this first because you do the D-film breakdowns, and I just look at the stuff and look at when you and Mike O'Connor go through the secondary film, the whole defensive film, and it just seems like the Jets keep making the same mistake over and over and over and over again, and Rex will just not adjust. I don't get it. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing the same thing. I actually outlined it last night on Twitter. I did a breakdown of the 3rd and 6 32-yard pass to Eddie Royal. The problem is, it's not even the Rex you saw in 09 that was running this. And mind you, he had Darrelle Revis on the field at that time. The corners on the outside were D. Milner, Phillip Adams, and Kyle Wilson was in the slot with Antonio Allen on the tight end. And then he brought everyone else. But Rex was doing a lot of overload blitzes to one side or both sides in 09, and it was working a lot. Now for some reason, he brought both safeties up the middle, and Rivers, it was right in front of him. He saw it, and he had Gates and the running back stay in. Both guys didn't get there in time, and he threw up an easy pass. So, and that's not even a time you could blame Kyle Wilson. Nobody in the NFL was making a play on that.
Dalbin, do you think Rex will stop being so, I guess the best word for it is really kind
stubborn?
In the upcoming weeks?
Yeah, because he's facing Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, and he always tends to do different things against those two. The thing that bothers me, even Connor did break down that play, and he left Adams and Milner pretty much cover zero, and the D line can get enough pressure. I mean, this is a team that you have Calvin Pace putting his hand on the ground and having spin sacks. Like, you don't need to send all these extra blitzers at these guys. Your defensive line is talented enough to get in the backfield. And stubborn coaches don't adjust their schemes, right? Like, and Rex needs to adjust and realize that his strength is that front four. Let them go after the quarterback and flood the zones with DBs and linebackers. It's the only way that he's going to be able to beat these guys.
Question from Robbie Jersey, basically about Bilal Powell's usage. My thought, and I talked about this today, Chris Ivory is running in between the tackles for you on 1st and 2nd down. When he's tired, Bilal Powell steps in that role. Chris Johnson should be used as a pass catcher out of the backfield in the slot to supplement the problems at receiver. Stop treating him like Chris Ivory's backup and giving him the same type of plays. Use Johnson in more of a specialized role. It's foolish just not to be using Powell at all, a guy who played pretty well last year and brings something to the offense. How would you want to see the running backs use distributed in the coming weeks, Dalvin?
Ivory should be getting 20 to 21 carries. Bilal Powell should be getting the other 5 to 10, and Chris Johnson needs to be used in, like I know you touched on this in your article today, there's a shortcoming at receiver, right? Like, there's a lack of playmakers, so line them up in the slot. You saw the Seahawks do it with Marshawn Lynch, and Marshawn Lynch isn't anywhere near as athletic as Chris Johnson. Line him up in the slot. Line him up out wide. There were a couple times in the Bears game where they sent Chris Johnson out wide and had him one-on-one matched up against a linebacker. And Chris Johnson did have a step on him, and Geno didn't look for him, 1 or 2 times. But use him in different ways. Chris Johnson should not be running between the tackles. That's not his game. That's never been his game. And that was my fear when he had the touchdown last week, when he broke a couple tackles. That's not his game. That's fool's gold. You need to use him on the edges, use him in the slot, use him out wide. You can't. That's not his game. Give it to Chris Ivory the rest of the way.
Connor, what are your thoughts on the running back use and getting the most out of Chris Johnson at this point of his career?
Yeah, the lack of creativity is astonishing. I mean, I watched the game last night, and you see what the Seahawks do with Marshawn Lynch and even Robert Turbin. It's just astonishing what the Jets don't do. I mean, Chris Johnson, first off, a lot of people are like angry right now with the signing. I thought Ivory was the primary back from day one, but it doesn't mean it's Johnson's fault that he's not getting going. They're just handing him the ball up the middle, and the offensive line, especially the guards, are getting like pushed back, and Johnson can't even make a one-cut read. So if you want to get him going, line him up in the slot, use the jet sweep, which has been a pretty popular trend in the NFL. Fake jet sweep, run Ivory up the middle. Send Powell is an excellent pass protector. Have him chip. If this offensive line is not going to protect the quarterback, have Powell chip and then break out as the guy as the safety blanket across the middle. It's just amazing that I can see this stuff, and I've never coached in the NFL in my life. And Marty Morningweg in the middle of the game can't see this stuff. It's extremely concerning, and he's fallen off a cliff this year with his in-game adjustments. It's been atrocious.
He really has. I mean, it's something else to consider. I know Jet fans don't want to hear it, but why not use direct snaps to Chris Johnson then? Use whatever it is, because he's run that pretty well. I think it's like at a 3.5-yard clip. Don't run him behind Bohannon. Don't run him out of a single back straight up behind Winters or Cologne. It's not going to work.
Yeah, the coaching has been frustrating on both sides of the ball. I think we touched on it with the lack of use of Amaro, with the play calling in the red zone, with Chris Johnson being used as kind of north and south like runner, which is not his game. And the Jets don't have good enough personnel where they can get away with running this kind of windy, confusing offense that it's just so easy to defend. Last question, and then we'll kind of wrap up with some really quick thoughts on Denver because it is late and I didn't eat dinner and I'm hungry. And it looks like we got some really long comments in the comment section on my article today. Shocked. I appreciate it, and we'll read them all. But last question, it's about the wide receiver separation from Clue 24. All wide receivers getting any separation. Basically, the question, I feel like it's been an issue. It was particularly an issue last week. You had David Nelson playing at about 70%. He's already not fast as is, although Geno did miss him on the first drive. And, without Decker, you're putting too much on the plate of guys like Greg Salas and even Curley, who I think did really well, did very admirably when Decker was out against Chicago. I thought he got himself open all night that night and played great. But without Decker and without Amaro and Johnson being used properly, it's very difficult to rely on Nelson and Salas to constantly win one-on-one matchups, to the point that we were even seeing like TJ Graham getting like a decent amount of reps, which is like kind of crazy considering he was 3-4 days ago. When Decker comes back, I do think you'll see things look a little better because Salas has made some plays and Curley's still an effective wide receiver, but the Jets need Eric Decker back. There's really kind of no way around that. Dalbin, quick thoughts on the Jets receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eric Decker has proved to be a very, very good signing. I know that like Jet fans were saying like, oh, well, he's been hurt and et cetera, but again, you couldn't have fathomed that a guy that hadn't missed a game in 3 years suddenly, has this nagging hamstring injury. But without him, Marty has to do a better job because they're getting open. And the offensive line needs to give Geno time, too. Because on the first play where he overthrew Nelson, he had enough time. It was just a bad throw by Geno. He needs time to go through his reads. The offensive line needs to give him time. And the receivers you can see that some of them are getting open. They have to use Amaro more because he can run routes and he can get open. Nelson as well, Salas as well, too, has flashed enough. I think it comes back to the offensive line, though. They have to give Geno more time because in the San Diego game, he had a defensive lineman in his face almost every time he dropped back. And that's not going to give your receivers enough time to get separation.
Connor, your thoughts?
Did we lose? Sorry, I was writing out a slide.
There we go.
Yeah. Overall thoughts, just how they're going to be competitive, would you say?
The receivers.
The separation.
Oh, sorry. I'm completely lost. It's been a long day in the NFL. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it answers itself. It's not going to happen. If you bring in this kind of talent in the NFL, what do you expect? These guys aren't going to separate. I think Eric Decker was a great addition, but unfortunately he's been hurt. And that's not an excuse because in the NFL, you get graded on your depth signings. Look at the Seahawks that won the Super Bowl last year. They were the deepest team in the league, and it's no coincidence that they won the Super Bowl. So think about that. It's a shame to say, but if the offense isn't going to be creative, you're not going to get much going with it because there's just not enough depth at the receiver position to get separation and move the ball.
All right, wrapping up. Really, really quick thoughts on Denver. Brutal matchup for the Jets. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure that out and figure out why. Do I think they will show up a little bit more than they did against San Diego? Probably. But even as someone who's often criticized for being too optimistic of a Jets fan, I don't think it's reasonable. I can't pick them to win this game in a sensible way. I do think they're probably going to lose by 10 points. It's just not a good matchup for them, not the way they're playing right now. I certainly hope they prove me wrong and play better and are competitive and have a chance to win in the fourth quarter, but I very well see this game being, 34-17, 34-14. I think they'll play much better. I wish they were playing New England this Sunday and didn't have to play in New England on a short week. I think that would be a better matchup for them right now, but it's a tough matchup, man. I mean, Denver is probably the best team in the AFC if San Diego isn't, and the Jets just aren't equipped to play with them right now. Dalvin?
Yeah, Denver, I mean, like I said before, Denver's the best team in the AFC to me. I think that Peyton clearly, he lit up a very good Arizona defense last week. Was Antonio Cromartie allowed almost over 300 yards receiving from Demaryius Thomas?
I didn't hear anything from the people who begged to get
right. Exactly. Demaryius cooked him. So, I think it's a bad matchup for the Jets. I do think they're going to come out better than they did against San Diego. The weather might be a factor. I think it's supposed to be like 55 degrees during
Please
kickoff.
rain. I hope it pours. God, let it rain.
Let it rain. But it's a bad matchup for the Jets. I do think they'll be more competitive, but it's just it's a tough matchup. Again, Rex is due for one of those games, and he didn't have it in San Diego. Maybe he'll have it this Sunday, but we'll see.
Connor, real quick.
Yeah, no, they know the hot seat is on, and they're gonna come out. They're gonna come out swinging. But I think it'll be one of those games where they hang around until about halfway through the third quarter, and they just kind of let it go. Which is a shame to say, but Denver's a great team, and the Jets just aren't equipped right now to compete with them. As we said, it's just I don't see it happening. I think they lose. If I had to guess, I would say they lose about 31-17, 31-14.
I think we do get the Cumberland garbage touchdown though, because I think we're due.
We're due for one, man. You said it. You nailed it.
We literally had 4 touchdowns last year, and they were all down by like 20 or more in the last 5.
Exactly. So get ready. Get ready. Come be watching.
Probably into a new contract. Thanks for reading, everybody. We'll have the roundtable tomorrow talking about the rest of the season. We'll have all our regular film goodness and 12-pack and all that fun stuff leading up to the game on Sunday. I will be watching live from a random sports bar in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Wait, we guys up. Yeah, it's a great question. Where is he? I don't know.
Where has Cole Patterson been?
He missed like 3 in a row, and he's working like 6 jobs. He's doing marketing. We'll get him back. We're going to get him back.
He might be with Mike Goodson.
Yeah, he might be with Goodson and Patterson. But, but stay with us. Check out Bill Barr.
Can I do the sign off?
You can do the sign off. Last thing, check out that Bill Barnwell piece on Grantland today. Thought it was excellent.
Solid piece.
Connor, sign us off. You got the last one.
From 2Shady18 on Joe's article from today. Joe, with a pause. If Idzik gets canned in the near future, will you apply for the GM job, please? I approve that message.
That message is TOJ approved.
My LinkedIn's updated. My resume is ready to go. And I'll bring Dalbin on as an offensive coordinator. Connor is
there we go. Let's make it happen. TOJ approved.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. And we'll get better at some point, I promise.
Thanks. Peace.
Thanks, guys.